So in the last session, we discussed about control statements. We started with control statements and understood what conditional statements are. That is, if, if else, if ladder, switch statements. We have seen multiple examples of those conditional statements. Now, as part of the control statements, we are going to learn about looping statements and branching or jumping statements. We can also call this as jumping statements. So what are looping statements? So to understand that, let us take, say for example, today, if I wanted to print some sentence or some string or some sentence like, say for example, I like Java. How do we do that? We write system.out.println like this. This actually prints I like Java in the console output when we run the program. But say for example, I wanted to print it again. I want to display the same message again 2 times. What do? We copy it, right? Say for example, in the same way, I wanted to display it 10 times. What we can do? This is how we can do it, right? So like this, maybe whatever number of times you wanted to display this message, this is how we need to repeat it. Just imagine if you wanted to display the same message 100 times. So you just need to repeat the same line 100 times, right? So it's a tedious job and it's not readable, it's not efficient, right? So how about like, say, I write the statement once, but I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna use something and make this print the same output 100 times. I'm gonna write this one statement, but I'll repeat this. I'm gonna give instruction saying that, hey, display this message 100 times. So that will be more efficient, right? So that is what the looping statements does. So what looping statements does is they are used to execute a block of code repeatedly based on some condition. So that is what the looping statements does. Looping statements are also called as, like, we can say iteration statements. Looping statements are iteration statements. So these are used to execute a block of code repeatedly based on some condition. So these are called as looping statements or iteration statements. So there are 3 types of looping statements. There are 3 types of looping statements: while loop, do while loop, and for loop. We'll understand one by one. First, let's take while loop. While loop. So what is while loop? How we declare while loop is, so this is the syntax. We write while is a keyword. We provide condition in the brackets, like how did we did for if. So in the same way, we open the braces and provide the condition. And once this condition is satisfied, if this condition is true, then it enters into the block of code and executes these statements within the block of code. And once all the statements are completed executing, then as it sees this enclosed bracket, braces, so then it again goes back to the while condition, this place, at this location, and verifies the condition again. If the condition is still valid or still true. If it is true, so then it again enters into the block of code, into the loop, executes the block of code, exits the loop. Again, exits the loop in the sense, exits is as soon as it sees the enclosed bracket. So it again goes back to the while loop, again checks the condition. So this condition is an expression which will evaluate to a boolean, true or false. So if it is true, it will execute the statements. How about, say for example, after some iterations, if this condition is false, so in that case, it will come out of the loop. It will not enter into the loop and execute this block of statements. It will come out of this loop. So this is how while condition works. So it will have like any loops, right? Any loops will have initialization, that is initial point. It will have some condition. So it should know where it has to start from. That's what we call it as initialization. And it has to have some condition. So only based on this condition, we wanted to execute the block of code repeatedly. So this is the reason we need condition. And so each time, if you wanted to repeat the iteration, so something has to happen, something has to be happen after each loop. That is what we call it as increment or decrement. So we'll see this, what increment or decrement is. So a change after each loop. So after each iteration is done, there will be some change, which we call it as increment or decrement. After that, the condition will be again verified. So it will be something like this. So initialization, first point, then verify the condition, and then increment or decrement. And after this, so only these two will be repeated. Increment or decrement. Once all the statements are done, then condition, verify the condition. Again, these two will be repeated until this condition becomes false. So the same way while loop works. While condition, there could be some initialization, but that will be before the while loop starts. That will be before while loop starts, and then when while loop starts, it verifies the condition. Only if condition is true, so the control enters into the block of code, executes this block of code. So once it is end, then after these statements, we usually write some increment or decrement statement, which actually which will usually impact this condition. Then we verify this condition again, right? Then we will verify this condition again. Then if it is true, then we execute the statements, or else we'll come out of this loop. So that's how the while loop works. Now, let us see an example on while loop. I'll create a class, or okay, I need to create a package for today. Okay, let me create a package. So even that is valid. I can directly create class within SRC also. So if you see here, say for example, I say while example. So you see a warning, the use of the default package is discouraged because so I didn't provide it in any package. So a default package gets created and my class will be within that default package. But that is discouraged. That is not a good practice. So you always need to create your own custom package. Let me create a new package. So new package. I'll call my package as day5 and then gonna create a new class for while loop. While example. So I'm taking new main method. So first what we'll do is we'll say for example, whatever we have seen, right? We'll take an index and we'll initialize the value to 1. Now I wanted to print something like I like Java. This I wanted to display it 10 times. Say for example, I wanted to display 3 times. This is how we can do it today, right? Just execute it. You'll see 3 times. But for example, I wanted to display 10 times. So there is no other choice except copying this statement 10 times, right? So this is what we know. But what we can do is we'll write this statement once, but we are going to use the while loop now. While we'll say this is the initialization part. We said initialization, right? So this will be the initialization part. And then we have to write some condition. So what is initialization? I usually represents index. So index equal to 1. Now I wanted to say some condition here. So even before the condition, while loop has to have this syntax, right? So let's complete the syntax. How do you maintain this indentation for this program, for the whole program is do control A and then press forward slash. That's the shortcut to have the indentation, correct indentation. Okay. So now while we have completed the while syntax, we wanted to display this I like Java 100 or 10 times for now, right? So what did we discuss as part of the syntax, while syntax, while loop syntax? So this have to have some condition. We have to have this condition. Only upon this condition is satisfied, it enters into the block. Now, I'm gonna write some condition. If I is less than 10, okay? If I is less than 10, then enter into this block of code and execute this statement. Once you see the close braces, go back to the condition again. Verify the condition if it is still true. If it is still true, print it again like that, right? So we displayed this message. Now we wanted to do increment or decrement. Initialization is done. So in the same way, we have provided the condition as well. Now we need to provide increment or decrement. So how do I do that? I'm gonna update my I value to 1. This is how we increment I value 1 by 1. Here we can use, if you remember, we can use increment operator as well. So what is this called? So this is called as post increment operator. I am increasing I value by 1. So I'm increasing I value by 1. So this is called increment. And once it increments I value by 1, it is 1, right? So 1 less than 10, true. It enters into the loop, prints the statement, then increments the I value by 1. So I value becomes 2 now. So as it sees the close braces, it knows it has to go back to the condition, verify the condition again. 2 less than 10 is still true. So it displays I like Java again, increments the I value. It will be 3 now, and so on till the point of 9, right? So let's see. So if you see here, it actually displays I like Java. So if you see, our intention was to display 10 times, right? But if you see, it has actually displayed 9 times. Why this happened? So let's go and verify it. So if you see 2, 3, if I value increases 1 each in each iteration, right? So what iteration is? So once it enters into the control, enters into the loop and completes one round, right? Completes executing block of code once. That is what we call it as one iteration. So if it goes back to the condition again, if the condition is true, and if it enters into the loop and executes the block of code second time, then that will be called the iteration 2, and so on, right? Now 2, 3, 4, everything will be like the condition will be true, right? Until 8. Say for example, it is in the 8th iteration now. 8 less than 10, true. It will display I like Java. Now, next I value is incremented. 9. 9 less than 10 is also true. It means I like Java, and then increments I value by 10. Now, 10 less than 10 will be verified in the 10th iteration. Is that true? No. As 10 less than 10 is false, so it will not execute. It will end the loop. It will come out of the loop and it executes the state. block of code which is present out of the while loop, right? So how to make this condition true and print 10 times is, so what we can do is we can just say I less than or equal to 10. So in that case, what happens when I value is 10, 10 less than or equals to 10 will also be verified. So this as I less than or equal to 10. So in the 10th iteration, this condition will be true. 10 less than or equal to 10 is true. So it will execute, it will enter into the loop, executes these two statements, then loop ends, sorry, iteration ends, goes back to the condition again. Now it is 11. 11 less than or equal to 10 will be false. Then it will come out of the loop. So this is how we need to fix it. So now you can see it actually displays 10 times. And it also says end of the loop. It came out of the loop already. And you can also say, instead of equals, you can also say I less than 11 also. This is also equivalent to I less than or equal to 10. But the usual practice is I less than or equal to 10. So it is readable, and looking at it, you know that the loop is gonna run for 10 times. You can even say I less than 10 also, right? And in some cases, like how we did earlier, say for example, if you make, if unknowingly, if you make some logical error, not syntactical error. So there are like two types of errors. Say for example, I don't know the syntax. So I'm writing the first time while loop. Say for example, I make, instead of, while writing the while keyword, I'm using, instead of small case W, I'm using uppercase W. So it will throw an error. If you see, it is throwing a red mark circle here. So a small one. If you hover on this, if you hover your mouse on that, it will tell you what the error is. Or just hover your mouse here on the while, wherever the error is coming, right? So it will tell you, tell you what the error is. It will just say you the method while boolean is undefined for the type while example is what it is saying. So it is saying, I do not know what you mean by this while is what it is saying. One quick fix available. It is also suggesting a fix. So create method. This is different. We'll discuss later. But if you see, this is how you get an error and you can't compile the code. So if you try to compile the code, it will tell you error exists in required project. My Java project. Proceed with the launch is what it will say. Error exists. This is what we need to see. So when we are trying to compile the code, compile the program, we should not have any errors, any syntactical error. So we have to fix that errors. This is called as syntax error. But what is logical error? Logical error is can be identified only at runtime. You can identify logical error at runtime. When you are running the program, you can identify it, like how we did it earlier, just now. So when we execute the program, it was displaying this statement only 9 times. But our intention was to display this statement 10 times. So that is what we call it as logical error. Logical error, so it will be present in the logic. This is some logic which we have written, right? To display this statement 10 times. So logical errors occur at runtime, and those are like usually made by the developer or the user, right? That can be identified. So how do you identify? Say for example, there is only 2 lines, you can easily identify. We identify. But say for example, if it is huge code, if it's hundred lines of code, then how do you identify where the actual logical error is? So in such cases, we use debugging. So what debugging is, I'll let you know. So for usually what happens, the control, it starts executing from the first line of code and it goes in sequence and executes each line of statements sequentially, right? So we actually take control of the execution of the program, and when we debug the program, so the execution actually stops wherever we wanted to stop, and then from there we can actually see how the control is behaving, like how the execution. how the execution is going on. That we can actually view using when we try to debug the program, right? So how to debug the program? That's the use of debugging. So while debugging, when we debug the program, we can see how the control flow of execution is going on in the program. Now, how to do the debugging? So that what happens, we can identify where the logical error is. So let's see an example. So wherever you wanted to actually start the debugging point in the sense, when program is running, it will stop there. It will stop in the sense it will pass there. So it will just pass there and ask and wait for your input. So we can actually look at the values or look at each line of code while executing the each line of code itself. We can see what the behavior of the program is. So you'll understand it better when I show you an example. So say for example, I wanted to pass my execution at this point. So what I need to do is I just need to, so at this line, so line 9, right? So in our case, I'm hovering on my mouse here, just double click it. So you'll see a small blue bubble here, right? So that is called as breakpoint. We wanted to pass the execution here. So in order to pass the execution here, we have to set a breakpoint. And how do you set it? I just clicked on it. Toggle breakpoint. You can also use the shortcut Control Shift P. Or just double click on this line wherever you want the program to be passed. Now, how do we debug the program? So usually what we do, we right click, we do run as, right? Instead of that, we need to do debug now. Right click, debug as we wanted to debug the program. So it actually opens in a different perspective. So this is the reason it is asking, you wanted to confirm perspective switch, right? So just click on switch. It will open in a different perspective, right? So this is debug. Now you can verify, like if you see here, this line, it started executing from the first line. So as we didn't have the breakpoint here, it just got into the next line. This line, it actually stopped because we have set the breakpoint here, right? So now, if you see, we wanted to see how the program is getting executed. So for that, we can step over. So if you see, we get step over. Step over is, we can execute the next line of code by pressing F6. F6 is the shortcut here. So press F6. And if you see, I value is 1, right? Earlier. You can also see here. So this condition is true. Now it has to enter into the loop. And yes, it entered into the loop because this condition has been true. Now, if you see, it is there at this statement, I like Java. Again, if you wanted to go to the next line, right? So just hit step over, that is function F6. We are looking at the behavior of the program now. So if you see, it actually displayed that statement onto the console. So how the program is getting executed till, right? So how it actually executes, that we are actually viewing now, line by line. Now, the control is at the I plus plus statement. So observe it now carefully. So I is equal to 1 now. So it has to increment the I value. You can also see here. So if you see, I value has been turned into 2 on the right. On the right, you have breakpoints variables. So just click on the variable tab and you can see I value as 2 here. No. So I value is 2. You can also hover on this variable to check its value. The current value of I is 2. 2 less than 10 is true. Now it has to enter again into the loop. It has to print I like Java again. Yes, it prints onto the console. The same statement again. I value is going to increase now. And it has become 3. You can see the I value here. And also you can hover on this I value. So is 3 now. So like this, it goes on repeats till I value is 9. Right? I value is 8 now. Yeah. So condition is true. F6. It prints for the 8th time. I value is 9. So even 9th iteration also 9 less than 10 is true. Enters into the loop. I'm just pressing function F6. Now I value is 9. Fine. I value is gonna increase now. Observe. So I value is 10 now. So is 10 less than 10? Okay. So I value is 10. Okay. So our expectation was to print the statement, or we wanted 10 iterations. This is the 10th iteration. Now, while checking the condition 10 less than 10 is what the condition is. So it verifies the condition. Now see, it comes out of the loop because the condition has failed. The condition has become false, so it comes out of the loop. It displays end of the loop and it exits the program. See, program is executed. I can't even press F6 now anymore as the program terminated. So this is how you can debug and find the issues. Now, what was the issue? We clearly found that at the 10th iteration, it actually stopped instead of entering into the loop. So which means that our condition, there was something we need to modify in our condition, right? So then we can go into our condition, verify, like why it failed. Okay, 10 less than 10. So the 10th iteration, it didn't enter into the loop because the condition has become false, because my condition is to verify less than 10. But what I was expecting was to have 10 times, to have 10 iterations, to enter into the loop 10 times. But my condition was less than 10. So less than 10 will be 9, right? So 9 is, so it actually executes 9 times and it exits. So in order to fix this, I'll just include I less than or equal to 10, or I can do I less than 11. So one of the way we can fix it. So this is a small example. How do you actually debug a program? So when you see an unexpected output on the console, or when you are seeing an unexpected behavior, then you can toggle your breakpoint here. Wherever you wanted, you have a breakpoint, and then you can debug your program to verify where the actual, actual bug is. Bug in the sense issue, right? If you have any issue, you can toggle the breakpoint, and then you can debug the program to find out what the issue is. So at runtime, we can see all the variable values, which actually helps us to debug the program and fix our issue. So this is about debugging. Now, let's go back to our loop. So this is all about while loop, right? Now, we'll see one more example. This is a simple example, right? So now let's see one more example. Say, for example, I have my index as 1. So I have initialized the value to 1. You have to observe. So this is warning. This is yellow, right? This is warning. You can even read the warning. The value of the local variable is not used. So we have declared, we have initialized the value, but it is not never used is what it is saying. It is just a warning. Warning will be displayed in yellow and it can be safely ignored. We can read the message. If possible, we can fix it or we can even ignore. No worries. Now, I wanted to actually display 10 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that, right? So usually we used to do like this, right? If you wanted to print the numbers from 1 to 10, we can display like this, 1, 2, 3, like this. But as we know, we can perform this, or if you see, this is repetition. Same statement we are repeating, just something is varying. So, but everything is like repeated, right? So in such cases, we have to use the loop. And what is varying? So that varying, we have to control it using a variable. So if you see clearly, each statement is varying with something called this number, right? So we have to identify that and we have to use a variable there. So whatever is varying, we can actually, wherever something is everything is constant, but something is varying, we have to declare it as a variable and control that using a variable. Okay, now I wanted to print 10 times this statement. How do we do that? Again, like using while loop. While I'll open a braces. So again, the same thing, like how we understood for if or the conditional statements. So if there is only one statement, you don't need this braces after the while loop. But if you have more than one statement, you definitely need this braces, opening brace and a corresponding close brace. But it's always a best practice, even though if you have one statement, so it's better to enclose the statements in a braces, in braces, right? Now, what will be my statement? I wanted to print 10 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, till 10. So how do we do that? Say, for example, I wanted to display 1, 2, 3, like this, till 10. So how we'll write a condition is, so I is 1 now, right? I value is 1. It starts with the initial value. Now it enters into the loop, it will print I value, right? I value is 1. Now we are going to increment I by 1. After we display I value, then we are going to increment I value by 1. Then it will actually enter into the loop. So 2, it will display 2. Then it has to increment by 1. Then it will display 3. Then it will increment by 1. It has to display 4 and so on, right? And so on till 9. So when 9 is there, so I value is 9. It will increment by 1. Then it should display 10. Then after 10, it has to end the loop. So if you observe, wherever we wanted to end the loop, so wherever we wanted to start the loop, that's called initialization, and we'll start our index from there. This is initialization, where we start the loop from. And whenever we wanted to end the loop, right? So this is where we actually concentrate on the condition. So how do we need to, how I know to write the condition? So that you will know where you wanted to end the iteration. So I wanted to end the iteration at 10, right? 10th iteration. So in that case, I should be using this as my condition. So now let's understand it. Now let's write the condition. So I equal to 1. Initialization part is done. Now I wanted to run the condition. So how many times I wanted to run this? For 10 times, right? Just now we have seen I less than or equal to 10. So this actually allows to enter into the loop 10 times, 10 iterations, right? So I less than or equal to 10. This will be my condition. And then, so if I display here system.out.println, say for example 1, right? And then I can display anything. I'm just displaying the number 1, right? So you can see. Then I wanted to increment I value by 1. So I plus plus. Done. Now, so control, what it does, it enters into the loop, prints 1, and it has to actually loop it 10 times. Let's see that. So if you see, it displays only once, all the ones 10 times, right? But this is not what we are expecting. We wanted to actually have a variation in this. This number has to vary in each loop, in each iteration, right? So how did it varies? So for varying, we actually use the variable called I. And if you see each time it enters into the iteration, it actually modifies I value. So what we can do, we can use that itself, that to display the numbers. So I, right? I can say, I'll just display something called iteration, like is for concatenation, and then my I value, my iteration value. So let's execute this. So now we can see the output clearly. So what it says iteration 1, iteration 2, and so on till iteration 10. So the loop got executed 10 times because we use the variable I, and the condition we have set is 10. We started with 1. So each this condition will be verified, 1 less than or equal to 10 is true. It enters into the loop and executes this statement. And when we do I plus plus, I value is increased by 1. Again, the condition is verified. After this, condition is verified. So and so on. It is going to print. And if you see here, instead of some constant, we are actually displaying some variable, which the value actually varies in each iteration, right? So for each iteration, I value is varying, and we are actually using that here. So we are displaying that I value here in the iteration, right? So this is the reason we see this output. So which means that the iteration has run 10 times. The loop has actually run 10 times. As the condition is true, 10 times. Then so I becomes 10, so I value will be incremented, will be 11. 11 less than or equal to 10 will be false, right? Then it will exit the loop. So this is how we were actually displaying numbers 1 to 10. You can even just remove this if you want. If you wanted to display only numbers 1 to 10. You can see only numbers 1 to 10. This is just for our understanding. 1, 2, and so on. Filter, it will print, right? This is one example. And let's see one more example. Say, for example, I wanted to display only even numbers. I don't wanted to, print all the numbers, but I wanted to print only even numbers. How can I do that? So even number starts with 2, right? So our initial value will be 2. So whenever we are writing the loop, we have to concentrate on three things. Initialization part. First will be initialization part. From where should I start my loop? So it actually starts with the initial condition. So my initial condition will be I equal to 2 this time. And what is my condition? So we'll come to this later. And what I wanted to print? I wanted to print only even numbers, right? So we'll also see this now. Earlier we displayed all the numbers. Now we wanted to display only even numbers. How do we do that? So what are the even numbers? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on, right? Now this we know, but how do we make the program to understand to display only even numbers? So how do we do that? This is the initial point. When we are writing loop, we should know the initial point. So this will be our initial condition where we need to start with. All right, we'll start with 2. Now it has to display 4, as 4 will be the next even number. So what happens here? What will be our operation to print the 4 next after 2? If you wanted to print sequentially, we'll increment it by 1. But we wanted to display the next even number now. So we have to increment it by 2. Then 4 will be displayed. Then after 4 is displayed, we wanted to increment by 2 again to get the next even number. You can see it clearly, right? So it is 6 now, and so on, right? Till the even number which you wanted to end the loop with. Say, for example, I wanted to display even numbers till 10. So from 1 to 10, whatever are the even numbers, I wanted to print those numbers. So I'll display those even numbers and write my condition on the last iteration. So last iteration, it will be 10, right? So based on this, I'll write my condition because I wanted to end the loop here. So let's write the condition now. While, so we started with initial point, right? Initial point we know, right? But we wanted to also write the condition, condition to end the loop. So the condition is used always to either enter the loop or break the loop. So now we wanted to enter the loop. So as we are in the initial condition and we wanted to, end the loop once we reach this condition. So 2 will be our initial point, 10 will be our, end condition. So 2 less than or equal to 10. Like that, we have to verify 4 less than or equal to 10, 6 less than or equal to 10. Like that, we have to verify till it reaches 10. So once it reaches 10, so it has to come out of the loop. So looking at this logic, like you have to write some logic like this, and then you have to start coding or you have to start writing the program. So if you see, what will be my condition? I have to end it till 10. So I will be less than or equal to 10. Till this point, the condition, so till this point, we have to enter into the loop. Once I reaches 10, so it has to come out of the loop. So this is the logic we'll write it. Now, the same logic which we performed in the last two examples, right? So until it becomes 10, it has to enter into the loop. Now, I wanted to print the value I. We'll print the value I. And this time, instead of incrementing I by 1, so here we have seen the logic here, right? Instead of 1, we have to increment it by 2. So how do we do? How do we increment I by 2? So we can just say I equal to I plus 2, right? I equal to I plus 2. But we can also do it something like this. We have learned this. So this is called a shorthand operator. So when we are discussing operators, we have discussed this. The shortcut of I equal to I plus 2 is I plus equal to 2. This we call it as shorthand operator. We are incrementing I value by 2. Why we are doing this? We used to do, like we used to increment I value by 1 usually. Where whenever we wanted to display the numbers 1 to 10, or whenever we wanted to run the loop for sequentially 10 times, right? This time we wanted to display only even numbers. This is the reason we are incrementing I value by 2. Here you can see the logic, right? So plus 2 will be our increment condition. 2 will be our initial point. So 10 is the place where we need to end. And each time we have to know the increment or decrement. Increment is 2 here. So we are incrementing I value by 2. So if you see here, okay, let's execute this program and verify. Yeah, it clearly displays output as 2 to 10. So same output, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So first time 2 less than or equal to 10. So true condition. So I value will be displayed. 2 will be displayed. Now I plus equal to 2, meaning I is incremented by 2. So it is 4. 4 less than or equal to 10, true. 4 will be displayed and so on till 10. 10 less than or equal to 10. 10 is also an even number, right? So 10 less than or equal to 10 will be true. 10 will be displayed. Then I value will be incremented by 2. It is 12 now. 12 less than or equal to 12 is false. So it comes out of the loop. So this is how we can actually print even numbers. So print even numbers from 1 to 10. So we understood a logic for finding even or odd number, if you remember. So that is, how do you find if a number is even or odd? If you remember, we say for example, this is my number. We can divide the number and find the remainder. So in order to divide, we use slash. In order to find the remainder, we do modulus operator. I percentile 2, if it is equal to 0, then it's a even number, right? So we can even use this logic to print the even numbers. So let's see that. Int I equal to 2, same condition, initially condition, but I'm gonna write the loop using this condition. So say, we'll say I less than or equal to 10 will be, condition will be the same. But our logic, the other logic which we wanted to use to find if the number is, even number or not, that will change. So if I percentile 2, which leaves the remainder, right? And we wanted to compare it with 0. So if it is 0, right? So if it is 0, then we call that as an even number. We used to call that as an even number. We wanted to display that number. We know I, if it is divided by 2 and leaves the remainder as 0, it is a even number. And I wanted to display this time only even numbers, right? This was the logic we used. We incremented I by 2 every time. Instead of that, we can even write some condition like this. We have write an if condition inside the while loop. So what happens with this? Now, I'm gonna display I value here and then increment I by 1. So each time what happens? So I starts with 2, 2 less than or equal to 10, true. 2 percentile 2 is equal to, 0. Or you can even start I value with 1, as we wanted to print even numbers from 1 to 10 here. So I less than or equal to 10, true. I percentile 2 will leave the remainder as 1. So 1 is equal to 0, false. So in this case, what happens? It is still in the while loop, but it is not entering into the if loop. So we have written if condition within the while loop. So it will not enter into the if, but it is still in the while loop, right? So it will come out of the if loop, as if condition failed. It has to increment the I value by 1. Now it increments I value by 1. So it becomes 2. Now the while also while loop also so is completed here, right? So it has to go back. We came to the end of the while loop. So it will come up, go back to the condition again, verify the condition again. 2 less than or equal to 10. Yes, this is true. So it enters into the while loop. Again checks for the condition, if condition. 2 percentile 2 is 0, right? 2 divides 2 by 1. So the remainder will be 0. 0 equal to 0 will be true. So it enters into the if loop, prints the number I. What's the value of I? 2. Again, I value will be incremented by 3. Goes back to the while condition. 3 less than or equal to 10, false. Sorry, true. Enters into the if condition. 3 percentile to 1, right? So 1. So even it doesn't satisfy the condition. So it then doesn't enter into the if loop. So it skips it. Then prints then increments I value by 1. It is 4 now. And so 4 will be like enters into the while loop, and also if condition will be true. Then it will display value 4 here. Enters into the if loop, prints the value 4. Right? So every time, if it is even number, it enters into the if loop. If it is not, it will just increment the I value and checks the condition. Each time, in each iteration, I value will be incremented, irrespective of if it is even number or odd number. But only if it is even number, it enters into this if condition. That's what the logic here is. Now, let us execute this program. So you can see the same output. You can see the same output 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Even numbers which are 1 to 10. Which are from 1 to 10, all the even numbers here displayed. So now this is about even numbers, right? So say for example, I wanted to display odd numbers. So how can we do that? Same way, I wanted to display odd numbers. How can we do that? Let's see that. I equal to 1. No, while condition. I wanted to display odd numbers from 1 to 10. What are all the odd numbers? I wanted to display from 1 to 10, all the odd numbers. We'll print I value here. Or we can use the same condition, what we did earlier. But here, instead of comparing with 0, what we can do, we can compare it with 1, like this. So whenever a number leaves divided by 2, whenever it leaves remainder 1, then it will be an odd number. So that's the logic. We will print I value and I will be incremented by 1. So if you see, the condition looks very much similar. But earlier, we are comparing the remainder with 0, as we wanted to print even numbers. Now this time we are comparing the remainder with 1, as we wanted to display odd numbers. Odd numbers are 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, right? So let's verify that. Yeah, we can clearly see it displays odd numbers from 1 to 10. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So once the value is 9, I value is 9. So 9 less than or equal to 10 will be true. So it prints 9, but enters into the if condition as well, prints 9. But once I value is incremented, it becomes 10. 10 less than or equal to 10 is also true, but 10 percentile 2 will be 0. So it's an even number. So it doesn't enter into the if loop. I value will be incremented 11, then goes back to the while loop condition. 11 less than or equal to 10 will be false, then it comes out of the loop. So this is what happened there, right? And we saw the output, right? So this is about printing odd numbers. Print odd number from 1 to 10. You can even write this condition in a different way. So looking at the above condition, I percentile equal to 0, we can even say if it is not 0. So it can either be 0 or 1, right? When divided by 2. So when we do modulus operator, so it will, we know it can either leave the remainder 0 or 1. So what we can do is, if it is not 0, it will be an odd number. If it is 0, it is an even number. So in the same way, we can write this condition as well. Not equal to 0. It can be equal to 1 or it is not 0. Both are the same. So, but for better readability, you can say I percentile 2 equal to 1, because immediately once you look at this, you know that you are trying to find a odd number with this condition, right? All right. So this is about how do you display odd numbers from 1 to 10 using while loop, right? Now let's actually display numbers from in reverse order. I wanted to display something like this. So till now, what did we do? We display numbers from 1 to 10 in an increasing order, right? Now I wanted to display my numbers in a decreasing order. So how do we do that? 10. I wanted to display 10. Then 9, 8, 7, 6, and so on. 1. So if you see, as we wanted to display numbers in decreasing order, so this will be our initial condition. So we are going to start with 10. This is very clear. Now we have to end it with 1. This is also clear. So our condition is going to be on this. And our initial value will be 10. We know that. Now, what will be our increment or decrement? So there will be three things, right? Initialization, condition, and increment or decrement. This time we are going to decrement instead of increment. So once we display I value 10, we will decrement the value by 1. Then it will display 9. Then decrement the value by 1. It has to display 8. And so on till 1. So once we reaches 1, so we have to know that our condition has to be on 1. So this is where we'll write the conditional, right? It has to not go beyond 1 or not go below 1, right? So that will be our condition. So let's write the condition. So what is our initial value? If you see, my initial value is 10. We start with 10. As we wanted to display numbers in reverse order, in decreasing order from 10 to 1, right? Now, while condition, while will be I. What is the end condition, or what is our last value? 1, right? Or we wanted to write the condition on this value, right? So I till what point? I till if it is 10, 9, 8, everything is fine. Till 1, it has to print. But once it reaches 1, we have to come out of the loop. So our condition has to be on 1. So I, if it is, what's the value of all these compared with 1? All are greater, right? Compared with 1. So we have to, and it has to, loop has to be satisfying all these conditions. Whenever the number is 9, it has to be true. 8, it has to be true. Till 1, it has to be true. And all these numbers are greater than 1, if you observe. So I greater than or equal to 1 will be my condition. So when I in the sense, you have to imagine these are all the numbers which are varying. So each time the value, I value will be taking these numbers, right? So I value is this. So I value will be every time, even it is decremented. And if you observe, it is greater than 1 every time. So once it reaches 1, then it has to not decrease the 1. It can decrease the value by 1, but it should not print the values below 1. That's what we wanted to achieve, right? Display numbers from 10 to 1, 10 to, right? No? So we have written the condition. Now we wanted to print the number. Printing the number is simple. So we wanted to just display the number I, right? So, and then this is important. I equal to I minus 1. So Each time we used to increment. Now we are decrementing I value by 1. So we can also write this like this, right? Using decrement operator, I minus minus. I'm using post decrement value here, right? Post decrement operator, I minus minus. Now what happens? 10 greater than or equal to 1, true. It should display 10. Then I minus minus, decrement I value by 1, 9. 9 greater than or equal to 1 will also be true. 9 will be displayed and so on till 1. 1 greater than or equal to 1, 1 will be displayed. Then I minus minus 1 minus 1, 0. So I value is 0. 0 greater than or equal to 1 will be false. It should come out of the loop. Yeah, we can clearly see the output. 10, 9, 8, 7, and so on till 1, right? So the numbers are displayed in decreasing order from 10 to 1. So this is how we can display numbers from 10 to 1. So we have to be careful while writing the condition. We have to know the initial condition, where we need to start with, where we need to end. Where we need to end, we can control that using the condition here. So until this condition becomes false, the loop will be executing continuously. Once this condition is false, so control comes out of the while loop. So initialization, like initial point, end point is condition, and then increment or decrement. Okay, now I'll show you how important the condition is. Say for example, I started with I, or say for example, I write a while loop, which says which I'll compare it with some equality. I'll just say I love Java. Now I'm not going to do any increment or decrement, but if you see, I'm just comparing some equality. Say for example, I do have some initialization as well, and I'll compare I with I, and I'm not incrementing or decrementing, or you can even increment your value, right? Now what will happen? So let's execute it and verify. So if you see, it is displaying I love Java continuously. It is very fast. It is displaying I love Java very fast. You can terminate the program by clicking this red color square icon. Click on this, it will stop. So if you see what happened here was, we had an initial value, fine. But what's our condition? I'm verifying 1 equal to 1. So this will be true, right? 1 is equal to 1. Yeah, true. It enters into the loop. It displays I love Java. And I value is incremented by 1. So I is 1 now. 1 equal to 1, true. I love Java is displayed. In the same way, in every iteration, I value is compared with itself. So when we compare with itself, it will be equal, right? Always. So this condition will never be false. It is always true. So if it is true, so always it enters into the loop. It will never come out of the loop, right? This is the reason it was displaying this I love Java string so many times, right? It was never ending. This we call it as infinite loop. So we have to be careful while writing the condition, because if the program goes into infinite loop, then it's like it will be using lots of resources, lots of memory sometimes, right? So it never comes out of the loop. Then you can't execute the subsequent statements in your code, right? So you have to be careful while writing the loops to make sure that it doesn't go into the infinite loop. This is the reason condition is very important when we are writing the loops. So this is all about the while loop. Is it clear? Yeah. Okay. Let's jump on to the next topic. do while loop. So what is do while loop? So let me write the syntax here. Do and then open brace, close brace, while condition. This is also almost like a while loop, but what happens is, so initialization happens at the starting, same as while loop, but condition is verified at the end. So increment or decrement will be here. Statements and then increment or decrement. Right? So if you observe earlier, initialization, condition, and then increment or decrement. Right? Now initialization, increment or decrement, then condition. So the order has changed if you observe. So this is how the do while loop works, right? So do initialization, after initialization, it enters into the loop, do while loop, then it executes the block of code. So whenever I write this statement, you need to understand that as a block of code. So it executes block of code, then increment or decrement will be performed, and after that, the condition will be verified. So if the condition is true, it again goes back to the starting point of the loop. It starts executing the statements again, then increment or decrement. Again, the condition will be verified. So here also, the condition is an expression which should evaluate to a Boolean value, either true or false. So if it is true, it will start from the executing the statement from the start of the loop. So it is actually increment or decrement the variables. Then whatever we have been using the condition, right? Then the condition will be verified. Say for example, the condition is false after running for some number of iterations. Once it is false, then it will not go to the start of the loop. It will come out of the loop. So this is how do while loop works. You'll understand it better when we see an example. Let's understand with an example. You can close this perspective, debug perspective. Now I'm going to create a new class. I'll call my class as do while loop, or just a do while example. Now let's start with displaying numbers 1 to 10. So we know how to do it with while loop. Now we wanted to see it with do while loop. Now we wanted to see it with do while loop. So either it is while loop or do while loop, right? Any loop. So we need the initial point. So we have taken an initialization point. I should start from 1. I stands for index. It start and it is starting from 1. All right. Now we used to write the while loop, right? But now let's understand do while loop. Do while and a condition. Initialization is done. Next, we have to do an increment or decrement. And then we have to write the condition. First, we can write some statements here. I wanted to display I value because I wanted to display numbers from 1 to 10. So if you see 1 to 10, I wanted to display the numbers 1 to 10, started with 1, displaying the value 1, I value, that is 1 for the first time. Then we'll increment the I value by 1. We are using increment operator I plus plus. So I value is increased by 1 now. Now, after exiting, before just exiting the loop, we write the condition. We write the condition here. What the condition? So the condition is we wanted to display numbers from 1 to 10, right? So the condition will be I less than or equal to 10. So till I less than or equal to 10. So, and also remember, semicolon has to be here at this point because entire this thing will be treated as one statement. So we have to, for this do while loop, we have to have the semicolon at the end, which says that the loop has been ended there, right? So to indicate that we need to have the semicolon there. But if you observe in while loop, we didn't have any semicolon. This you need to observe. This is how the Like this is how the syntax will be. So we didn't have any semicolon because in the do while loop, sorry, in the while loop, we had while condition and then block of statement, block of code, then loop ends. So entire block of code was within the braces. So within the braces, there could be multiple statements. Each statement ends with a semicolon. We have seen that. But and it ends the loop with a corresponding close braces. That was fine. But in the do while loop, if you observe, do open brace, close brace, and after closing the brace, before exiting the loop, we are actually having a while condition. So it is out of this braces or out of this loop now. So we need to have the semicolon. So you can just simply remember it as for while loop, you don't need semicolon, but ending the do while loop, you need the semicolon. Remember this. Now, how does this work? Let's verify it. I start with one do, and then inside the do loop, it enters into the do while loop. So it has to display value I, that is 1 for the first time. I plus plus increments I value by 2. I value is 2 now. So 2 less than or equal to 10. So if you observe, the condition has been verified first time for now. No. So 2 less than or equal to 10. It actually displayed 1 without even verifying any condition. It displayed 1. Right? Now it increments I value by 1. So 2. 2 less than or equal to 10. True. Then goes to the beginning of the loop. So beginning of the loop is this. So displays value 2. Displays value 2. I value is incremented by 1. 3. 3 less than or equal to 10 is true. Again goes back to the loop. So displays 3 and so on. Till at the point 9. Right? 9 when displays 9, I value is incremented by 1. 10 less than or equal to 10 is also true. So it will go back to the loop, come to the starting point, display 10. Then what happens? I value is incremented by 1, 11 this time. Now it will verify the condition. 11 less than or equal to 10 is false. So ends the loop, comes out of the loop. We can see it here clearly, right? So 1, 2, 3 till 10. Do while loop ends. So if you see, it starts with the initial value, enters into the loop, performs the or executes the block of state block of code. Code block it executes once without verifying any condition for the first time. It executes the code block, then verifies the condition. And in order to continue the loop, the condition has to be satisfied. If the condition is true, only then it will go back to the loop starting point and it will start executing the code block again, or else it will exit the loop. So this is how do while loop works. Now let's see one more example. We have displayed 1 to 10, right? So let's display in the reverse order as well. I wanted to print numbers from 10, 10 to 1 in a decreasing order. So decreasing order. So with what number we have to start with? We have to start with 10, right? From 10 to 1, we wanted to display the numbers in decreasing order. So 10 will be my initial point, and then we'll start the do while loop, print the number I. This time, we'll decrement the value by 1. As we wanted to display the numbers in decreasing order, we are using decrement operator, right? So I minus minus, which actually decrements I value by 1. Now, as this is do while loop, we'll write the condition at the end. What is my condition? It is, we need to display numbers from 10 to 1. So each time we are decrementing I value by 1. So once it reaches 1, it has to come out of the loop. So I greater than or equal to 1. Till that point, whatever the value is, if it is greater than 1, just go ahead with executing the line of code within my do while loop. Once it reaches 1 or is equal to 1 is also fine. The condition, if it is 1 is equal to 1 is also fine, right? So execute the statements within the block. But once it goes below 1, then this has to exit the loop. So this is the condition. The same condition what we have seen in the while example. So if you see 10, 9, 8, 7, and so on till 1. So initial condition executes the code block once and then verifies the condition. So if the condition is true, it again repeats the iteration until the condition is false. This is what the do while loop is. Is it clear? Okay. Now let's go on to the next topic, for loop. Very important one. Mostly we are going to use for loop in our programs when you are writing the Selenium programs. So this is the syntax of it, initialization. So this will be a bit different. Or before going to the for loop, so let's understand the difference between while loop and do while loop. So we have seen while loop, right? So the condition will be verified, block of code will be executed, then exit, then verifies the condition again after increment or decrement. Do while, so you can clearly see that it initialization, it enters into the loop, executes the code block once, even before verifying the condition, and then verifies the condition. So that's the difference, right? So let's see that programmatically. So let's first write the while loop. Now that we are very familiar, like with while loop, let's say, for example, I start my loop with 10. My initial condition is 10. And say, for example, I wanted to display number till 5. I say, for example, instead of decrementing, I'll increment the value. So observe now, my condition, my initial point is I equal to 10. And condition is 10 less than or equal to 5. Verifying the condition 10 less than or equal to 5. What should it happen? So let's see here. So it displays nothing. Okay, where is my console? So if you see here, it displays nothing. The program is got executed actually. You don't see anything in the console output. This is because, so we started with I as 10, right? So 10 less than or equal to 5, the condition has been false. So it never enters into the loop. It exited the loop. This is the reason we are not able to give anything as an output in the console, right? Now the same example, we'll do it with do while loop. So this is with while loop, right? What we wanted to do, we started with 10 and we wanted to print numbers, uh, say for example, I minus minus from 10 to 1. Or you can even say I less than or equal to. This is just a condition which intentionally we made it to be false, right? If you see, the condition was verified at the first time and it didn't even enter into the loop. Now, let's see the same behavior. I'll start with 10, okay? I'm gonna write the same condition. I less than or equal to 5 and print some I value. And say, for example, I'll decrement I value by 1. So in order to have the indentation, Control A, I. You'll get the correct indentation. Now you see, if you see, so that's how the while loop works, right? So it didn't enter into the loop. Now, do while loop. We start with I equal to 10. Then it enters into the loop. So if you observe, it actually displays the value 10. Then decrements I value by 1, 9. Still 9 less than or equal to 5 is false. So then it will come out of the loop. It says it has some syntax error. This is because we have an extra brace. So you can see the value 10 here. Only 10, right? As the condition has become after I value is incremented by 1, 9, 9 less than or equal to 5. So the condition has failed. But if you observe the difference, the condition initialization point is same, condition is also same, increment or decrement is also same, I minus minus, I minus minus, right? But if you observe, in the first case, while didn't allow into the loop because the condition is verified at the beginning itself. So the condition failed at the beginning, so it will not allow to execute the code block even once it is very strict on the condition. But in the do while loop, so do while loop allows at least once. So irrespective of the condition, it allows to execute the code block once. So it starts with, in our example, we started with 10, it enters into the loop, it displays 10, then I value is decremented by 1, 9, then the condition has been verified. Then it came to know the condition is false. So then the control exited from the loop. So we can clearly see the difference here. So while loop, it actually is very strict on the condition. Only if the condition is satisfied or true, we can execute the block of code within the loop. But when coming to do while loop, so first the code block is executed once, and then the condition is verified. So if you see, even the condition is false, like we started with 10, the condition, if you take the condition first, then it must have failed, like while loop. But condition is verified at the end for the do while loop. This is the reason. For the first time, it will execute the code block. Then while verifying the condition, if the condition is not satisfied, the condition is false, then it actually comes out of the loop. So that's the main difference we need to look at when we are working with while and do while. Now let's go back to for loop. For loop. So this is the syntax for initialization. So it will be a bit different, like coming to the syntax. Initialization will have everything in one line for initialization, and then we'll write a condition, and then we'll have increment or decrement. We'll have the code block here within the for loop. So how does it work? Let's understand it. So how for loop works? So for any loop, we understood first point will be initialization, right? So this will be the first point, first starting point, initialization. Then condition will be verified. So after condition is verified, if this condition is true, so if this whatever expression you write as a condition, if it is evaluating to true, it has to return a Boolean value. If it is true, then it enters into the loop, executes the block of code, these statements. Once it executes this code block, so before, after executing this, all the statements, then increment or decrement will be performed. Right? First initialization, condition. If the condition is satisfied, execute the statement. If the condition is false, then it will exit the loop. It will not enter into the loop, it will exit the loop. Say for example, condition is true. Then it will enter into the loop, execute the statements. After executing the statements, it will increment or decrement. Whatever we have written here as a condition to increment or decrement the index, it will perform this increment or decrement. And then it will again do this condition, like it will again go for the condition. So initialization, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, after incrementing or decrementing, it will verify the condition. From this point, there will be no initialization. So condition executes the block of statement if it is true, or else exit the loop. So say for example, if it enters into the loop, so all the statements are executed. then again goes back to increment or decrement. This will be continuous. Like condition satisfied, executes, enters into the loop, executes the code block, then again increment or decrement, checks the condition, executes the statement. This will be continuous, this circle, until this condition is false. Once this condition is false, then it will exit the loop. So this is how the for loop works. Now let us understand for loop with an example. Let me create a new class. I'll call my classes. Let's say for loop example. Say for example, a simple example, let's actually print numbers 1 to 10. So I'm not going to initialize my value here because as per the syntax of for loop, we need to initialize the value in the for loop syntax itself, right? So int I equal to 1. This will be my initialization. So after initialization, semicolon, then condition, then semicolon, increment or decrement, right? So what will be my condition? We know, by now we will be knowing that the condition to print 1 to 10 is like I has to be less than or equal to 10. We have seen in multiple examples, right? I less than or equal to 10 will be my condition. Then I value has to be either incremented or decremented. So as we are printing numbers in increasing order, it has to be incremented. Again, if you observe the syntax clearly, it has the open brace, close brace, corresponding closing brace. Within that, we have to write the statements. I wanted to print the I value as that is varying and it actually displays the numbers 1 to 10, right? Now let's execute it. So we can clearly see the output. It has displayed 1 to 10, right? So how did this work? It started with 1. So this was the initial point. It started with 1. Then condition was verified. I less than or equal to 10, true. Then it enters into the loop. I value is displayed 1, right? Now, after this, so it actually increments the I value. I value is 2 now. It will verify the condition again. 2 less than or equal to 10? Yes, true. Enters into the loop and executes the statement. System.out.println I. So 2. I value is 2. So it displays 2. Then goes back to the increment or increment 3. Condition is verified. 3 is displayed again. And so on. Right? So this will be continuous till 9. 9 less than or equal to 10 is fine. 9 will also be displayed. Then increment by 1, 10. 10 less than or equal to 10, true. Displays 10, fine. Now, goes back to I plus plus. 10 is 10 plus 1, 11. 11 less than or equal to 10, false. Then it exit the loop. As the condition is false, it will exit the loop. So this is how the for loop works. Similar to the other loops, only if you observe the syntax changes. So earlier we used to initialize it uh, irrespective like which the initialization part will be separate from the loop. But initialization part has come within the loop now. Within the for loop, we actually initialize, we write the condition, we also incrementing or decrementing. But we have to see this order. So initialization is done once, then the condition, execute the statements, then increment or decrement, right? Then condition again, execute the statements, increment or decrement, condition again, execute the statements, increment or decrement, condition again, and so on, right? This will be loop. This will act like a circle until this condition is false. So this is how for loop works. Now let's see one more example. Now we wanted to print only even numbers. So how do we do that? So even numbers from 1 to 10, what will be the first even number? First even number is 2, right? So we'll start with initial point 2, I equal to 2. So whenever we are writing the loop, what did we discuss? We have to know the initial condition. So even number starts with 2. So I'm starting my initial condition with 2. Now, as I wanted to display till 10, my condition will be I less than or equal to 10, the same. But observe now, I wanted to increment the value not by 1. So as I wanted to display even numbers, I have to increment each time my value by 2. So we can write it like this, or we can use the shorthand operator I plus equal to 2. So if you observe, okay, we didn't comment this out. Let's comment the first example. Now, if you observe, it displays only even number starting with 2, ends with 1. So it starts with 2 because our initial point was 2. Then the condition is verified, 2 less than or equal to 10 was true. Prints displays 2. Then goes to this increment or decrement. So it actually goes to this place, I plus equal to 2. Then I plus equal to 2 is I equal to I plus 2. That is 2 was the initial point, 2 equal to, like we are incrementing 2 by 2. That is 4. Then again condition is verified. 4 less than or equal to 10 is true. So it enters into the loop, displays value 4. And so on, right? 8. Then it will come to 10. It will display 10. 10 plus 10 is incremented by 2. So it will be 12. 12 less than or equal to 10 will be false. Then it exits the loop. So the same condition, we can even write it with our usual, how do we find the even or odd numbers? We know that, right? So even with that also, we can write. We depend on the reminder, right? So like that also we can write if. So this loop has to execute for 10 times. This will be the condition, right? It starts with 1. 1 less than or equal, it has to be executed 10 times. So this is the condition we have written. And then each time it has to increment by 1. And within if for loop, we will write an if condition saying whenever a number is divided by 2, if it is gonna leave remainder as 0, only then print the number. This is the condition for even numbers. We have seen this by now, like we have seen this multiple times. This is the condition, right? This we wanted to check with for loop. So initial point I equal to 1, I less than or equal to 10 will be. So it will actually execute it 10 times. Now, first time it enters, it will verify this condition. If it is satisfied, it will enter into the loop and display this number, or else it will actually skip. So if you observe, I'm not going to do I plus plus here because increment or decrement is taken care here. For the for loop, the syntax is like this. Increment or decrement, you are not going to write it separate inside the loop, but instead it is taken care within the loop. These differences we have to observe. So if you see, it is incremented here, then the condition is verified. If the condition is verified, enters into the loop, verifies this condition. The condition is simple. So dividing the number by 2, and if it is leaving the remainder 0, we are displaying the number because we wanted to display only even numbers. If it is odd number, then this will leave the remainder as 1. When 1 compared with 0, then that will be false. So it will not enter into the loop, meaning it will not display that number. It will just skip this if loop. Goes back to the this part. Include high value will be incremented by 1. Again, checks the condition. If it is satisfied, enters into the loop and so on, right? Until this condition is false. So this condition will be false when I becomes 11. So once I becomes 11, it exits the loop. Same, both the above one and this one is same, but in a different way. We are printing the even numbers in a with a different logic. Now let's see one example on decrement. So print numbers from. 10 to 1 in reverse order. So how do we do that? Again, as we wanted to start with 10, initial condition will be 10, and I this time has to be repeated till it is equal to 1. And what will be the condition? What do we need to do here after each loop? After each iteration, we have to decrement the I value because we wanted to print the numbers in decreasing order. And after this, I'm not, I'm not writing any statement, increment or decrement, because that is taken care within the for loop itself. So here we wanted to display numbers from 10 to 1. So we started with initial point 10, and then condition is greater than or equal to 1. We have to display all the numbers until it is equal to 1, decrementing the I value by 1 each time that we have seen here. And each time we'll enter into the loop. If the condition is satisfied, we'll display the number 10, 9, like that till it reaches the point 1. Once it is 1, it will display 1. Then I minus minus is 0. So 0 greater than 1 will be false. Then it will exit the loop. That's the logic we have written, and we can clearly see that the output 10, 9, 8, and so on till 1. So this is how the for loop works. Is it clear? All right. Now we have discussed while loop, do while loop. Yeah, we have discussed for loop as well. We have seen multiple examples on it. Now, which loop is preferred to use? So, if you are uncertain, like if you know the number of iterations in advance, then we can use the while loop. So, no, we can't say for loop every time. But yeah, let's see what loop is preferable, right? So, which loop is preferred to use is like if the number of iterations we already know in advance, then for loop is most often suitable. If you know the number of iterations in advance, then for loop is often more suitable, right? And if you wanted to execute the loop at least once, irrespective of your condition, you wanted to execute the loop at least once, then we can use do while loop. And if you are uncertain about the number of iterations, you don't know how many iterations you wanted to run the loop for, but you have some condition, right? But you don't know the exact number, like 10 times, 100 times. You don't know that number of iterations. But you know there is some specific condition, and you never know when that condition is gonna meet, right? Then in that case, while loop will be a good choice. So if you know the number of iterations in advance, then you can directly go and write the for loop. And if you wanted to execute the loop at least once, then do a loop is appropriate, because do while loop executes at least once before before verifying the condition, right? And if you are uncertain about the number of iterations, you are not sure about the iterations, but you'll have some condition. So, but you don't know the actual number of iterations you wanted to run for. So you will just write the condition and you leave it. So once that condition is false, then it will exit the loop. So in such case, if you are uncertain about the number of iterations, then you can use the while loop. So in order to understand it clearly or in a better way, so let's take an example. Say for example, if you wanted to ride by bike, so you know the initial place, so source place where you are starting from, and you know where you are going to, right? You know start point, end point, and also you know how much fuel is required to travel the distance, right? So you'll actually fill your bike with that amount of fuel, right? So in such case, you can use for loop. So understand for loop like that. You know the starting point, you know the end point. and you know the distance to travel and what's the amount of fuel required to travel that distance by bike, right? So in such case, we can use for loop. So you just need to imagine it like, you know, starting point, initial point, if translated to for loop, you know, end point, that is the condition, and you know how much fuel you wanted, you need required to travel the distance, right? That will be your, you know, increment or decrement operation, right? Then you can actually use the for loop. Say for example, do while loop. What we can consider for a do while loop is, say for example, you enter into a bus, then you enter into the bus, you travel for some distance, then you take a ticket, right? You take a ticket, and then you can continue your journey. If you are not going to take the ticket, then you'll be coming out of the bus, right? So you are not allowed into the bus, but you are at least entered into the bus. So you are entered into the bus, right? And after that, you take the ticket. And if you are not going to take the ticket, then you will be coming out of the bus for any reason, right? So this is the example for the do while loop. So at least executing once. The code block will be executed at least once before checking the condition. So this is the best example. Next, while loop. So if you wanted to board a flight, then you have to have the ticket in advance. Only if you have the ticket and show that, only then you are allowed into the, only then you are allowed to board the flight, right? So the condition is verified prior here, before even entering into the flight. So the condition is verified first. Only after it is satisfied, you are allowed to board the flight. Whereas in bus, you can enter into the bus, then you can take the ticket. So you, after entering into the bus, you will take the ticket. So meaning like you execute the code and then verify the condition. That's the example for do while. And if you know everything, like you know the source, you know the destination, you travel on your own, you know, by knowing the distance, you fill the fuel, you know how much fuel you want. In such case, you use the bike, right? The for loop. So for loop, so bike will be the example for that. Do while bus, you enter into that bus and then take the ticket. So do while loop. For flight, you take the ticket, only then you are allowed to enter into the flight, right? So that's while loop. Only upon satisfying the condition, we enter into the while loop. So the best example is flight. So this is how we can understand the loops. Now let's understand the a small topic, jumping statements or the branching statements. So what are jumping statements? So we can even call this as branching statements as well. Branching or jumping statements, both are same. So these are used to change the flow of execution by jumping into another part of the program. So these statements actually control the flow of execution. So usually the flow will be like from top to bottom, and if you have any loop based on the condition, the loop will be executing continuously until the condition becomes false. This we know, right? But these jumping statements actually are some special statements which actually control the flow of execution by jumping to another part of the program. So we will see that we have two such statements. So we do have break and continue. Break is one jumping statement and continue is another one. First, we'll understand what break is. So break is used to terminate a loop or switch statement prematurely. So till now what we understood, the loop, it will start with the initial point, initial value, then upon satisfying the condition, it will enter into the loop, then increment or decrement. This is what we understood. And upon satisfying the condition, it will again enter into the loop, right? And there is only one way to exit the loop, that is only upon condition becoming false. But break is a special statement which can use to terminate the loop prematurely. So we have seen this in switch statement, if you observe. Now we'll see an example to understand it. So what we mean by terminating the loop. So usually we terminate the loop when the condition is false, but break is a special statement which can actually terminate the loop. So we'll better understand with an example. Let me take an example. I'll call my class as jump statement, or yeah, I'll call that as jump statement example. Okay. Okay, let's take an example. Say for example, I wanted to display numbers from using, let's take for loop. So I wanted to print numbers from 1 to 10. What happens usually? So let's write that condition. So this will actually, we know it starts with 1. It has to run 10 times, and each time it has to increment by 1. I value has to increment by 1. So upon satisfying this condition, it enters into the loop, displays the number 1. 1 to 10, it has to display. We know. We already have seen this example, right? 1 to 10, it displays. That's fine. Now, say for example, and why did it actually stopped and exited the loop? Because once the value becomes 11, 11 less than or equal to 10 will be false. Then it actually exited the loop. We know that. We understood this, right? Now, say for example, for some reason, I wanted to write a condition. Don't go till number 10, but just come out of the loop once you reach 5 is what I wanted to say. Say for example, this is what my condition is. So even though my condition is to loop till I value is 10. Say for some reason I wanted to exit when my value is equal to 5. Then this is how we can use the break statement. So we write a condition. The for loop is same. So if you observe, we are displaying numbers 1 to 10. This is the usual program, right? But as a special case, we wanted to break the loop once I value is 5. So this is how you can do that. You write a condition, if loop, if I equal to 5, if it returns true, meaning if I value is becomes 5 is equal to 5, then it enters into the loop, it breaks. Break is a keyword used to break the loop. So breaking the loop, so it will come out of the loop even before the condition becomes false. So till now, we have seen when the loop will exit, it will exit only upon condition becoming false. But break is a special statement which actually terminates the program. When you use break, it will terminate the loop. Sorry, whenever I'm saying program, it is actually terminating this loop, for loop, right? So not only for loop, we can use it in any loop. Break is a special statement which actually breaks the loop. Now, if you execute it, yeah, if you see, it actually displays 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. It didn't go beyond that because once I value became 5, 5 equal to 5 is true. So it actually seen the statement break. So it actually came out of the loop, came out of the for loop, exit the loop, terminates the loop. It actually terminates the loop. So we will see the actual use case in the upcoming sessions. But for now, just you know, think it of like you can break the loop even with the break statement. So till now we learned upon condition becoming false, so control exits the loop. But as a special case, we can use break statement to break the to terminate the loop. So upon some condition satisfaction, we are breaking the loop. So break is a keyword which can be used, is a jumping statement which can be used to terminate the loop. So this is how the break statement works. Now let's understand continue. In order to understand continue, so this is for break. This is for continue. Int I equal to 1. I'll just for simplicity, I'll take the same example. I less than or equal to 10, I plus plus. will display the I value. We know this, right? What it will print? It will display 1 to 10. Now, say for example, if I is equal to 5. If I is equal to 5, what I wanted to do? Same. Like how we did break, now we'll do continue. So what continue does is, so the program will be normal, like it will start from one initial point, checks the condition, enters into the loop. So it verifies this condition if it is 5 or not. So if it is not equal to 5, then that's fine. This, it will not enter into the if condition. It will just display the number 1. So it will display 2, 3, 4 as well, right? As it never enters into this loop because I will not be 5 till it is displays 4, right? Then it increments I value by 1. It is 5 now. 5 less than or equal to 10, condition is true. Now enters into the loop, verifies the if condition. If I equal to 5, now I value is 5. 5 is equal to 5 is true. It enters into the loop. What happens? Break. If you use break, it will terminate the program. But continue, it continues to the next iteration. So it will not go and execute the subsequent statements after this. So whenever it sees continue, control actually goes back to the next iteration. Next iteration in the sense I plus plus. So I becomes 6. So it will not come and execute. It will not continue the execution. It will not continue to execute the statements after the continue within the loop. So there could be multiple statements even here, right? So we have only this statement. Say for example, you have some 10 statements, but it will never execute that statement. Once it is continued, it will just skip that iteration there and it will go to the next iteration. Next iteration in the sense I plus plus. It will become 6. 6 less than or equal to 10 will be true. And again, this condition will never be true again. So it will display 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? So let's see that. So if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has been skipped. So because we said like if I value is 5, just continue the iteration. Just go and continue. Don't so we use continue. So meaning don't execute the statements below the statement. Just continue the next iteration is what we said. And that's what we have seen in the output. You can clearly see that the value 5 has been skipped, right? Say for example, we wanted to display using this logic, we wanted to display even numbers. So how do we do that? So how you can do that is, I'm copying this code. How we can make this to actually display only even numbers. So say for example, if you remember the logical operator R, this is logical R. So I can write I equal to 1, I equal to 3. If I equal to 5, you can write something like this. What are we doing here? So we wanted to display only even numbers. So, and we wanted to use continuous, we wanted to achieve that using continuous statement. So what we did was, in the if condition, we are verifying if the numbers are odd numbers. So you're using logical operator R here. If you and logical operator, where so how does logical R work? So it actually enters into it will be true only if if one of the two Boolean values you are trying to operate on logical R, if it is true, it will enter into the loop. So if it is 1 or 3, 5, 7, 9, any one of this is true, any of these conditions is true, the entire expression evaluates to true. So if condition, if it is true, it enters into the loop and it will continue. So it will not go and print this number if any of these numbers matches, if y matches with any of these numbers. So you can see only even numbers got displayed. So this is because we are actually written a condition saying that if my I value is 1, say for example, the first time I value will be 1, right? 1 is equal to 1 true. So logical or if it is true, it is not going to compare any of the other operations as it has all the logical or. So it don't need to compare all this. It is satisfied. True, it is true. So at least if there is one true value, it don't need to look at the other conditions. it will anyway be true. So it enters into the loop, it will continue. Continue in the sense, it didn't display the I value here. It didn't execute the statement. Goes back to the next iteration, I plus plus 2. 2 less than or equal to 10, true. Comes to this condition, if condition. So I is equal to 1, no, false. That is fine. Or I is equal to 3. Is it 3? No. Is it 5? No. 7? False. 9? False. All are false. If if at least there is one true, it could have entered into the loop. But logical or how does it work? If everything is false, whatever Boolean values you have Boolean expression, if everything evaluates to false, then it will be false. So it will not enter into the loop. Instead, come down and displays the value. Then increments the value 3. We know what happens to 3. Like this will be false. I equal to 3 will be true. So if it is true, as we are using logical or, the entire expression evaluates to true. So it will enter into the loop, continue. Continue in the sense, it will not go and execute the next statement. It will instead skip that iteration then and there and goes to the next iteration. It will be 4 and so on, right? For 4, this condition will be false. So it will exit the loop. It will not enter into the if loop. It will display the number and so on, right? So this is how the continue statement works. Is it clear? So continue is used to skip the current iteration and proceed with the next iteration. All right. So in the last session, what we discussed, like we started with control statements, understanding the control statements, and we have seen like conditional statements. What are the conditional statements? If else, if ladder, switch case, and then we understood loops in today's session. That is while loop, do while loop, for loop, and we also understood what jumping statements are, break and continue. Don't worry, we'll see more examples on break and continue. We will see the actual use case in the coming sessions where we actually use the break and continue. We do have something called enhanced for loop as well. So enhanced for loop. So that will be used mostly on the arrays and on the collections. So we'll see that in the coming sessions. Enhanced for loop. And now, so yeah, let me go through the assignments for today. So I'll be giving some assignments for today. So you will be working on those assignments. So these are the assignments for today. So reversing a number. So if a number is given, we have to reverse the number. Say for example, if it is 1, 2, 3, 4, then output should be 4, 3, 2, 1. So we are reversing this number. So how do we do that is, hint is we'll be using slash and percentile. We'll divide the number uh, by 10. And every time we divide the number, we use this slash and percentile, use 10 as the logic to divide the number, and then we can reverse the number. So you can try this, and if you don't get the solution, you can watch this my YouTube video link where I have actually shown how to reverse a number. In the same way, like how do you check a number is palindrome? So a number is palindrome if you actually reverse the number. So 1 to 1 is a number, right? So if you reverse the number, if you get the same number again, then we call that number as palindrome. So given a number, you have to say if it is a palindrome number or not. So that will be the second assignment. And counting the number of digits in a number. So if you have numbers, like say for example, I have some number. I provide some number. We have to count the how many number of digits that number has. So if you take this number, this is a 6-digit number, right? So if I provide this number, the output has to be 6. It has to count each number and then it has to provide it as output as 6. And count the number of even and odd digits in a number. So if you see, I give a number. So you have to pick up each number, look if it is even or not, and then count that. You need to have that count in some variable, and then you have to finally display the output as in the provided number. There are three even numbers and two odd numbers in this case. So that's how your output should be. That will be your assignment. And then the sum of digits, finding the sum of digits in a number. So given a number, you have to find the sum of the digits. Like say, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you have to sum these digits like 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. Sum of all these digits. That will be 10 in this case, right? So given a number, you have to find the sum of the digits of that number and display the output. So these will be the assignments. Uh, yeah, you'll be working on these assignments. So once done, you can place the assignments in that folder. Okay. All right. If everything is clear, we can stop the session here.